Hey, welcome back to Season 5 of Porcelain Peak, a strange and scary podcast featuring news, trivia, and deep dive main discussions into the odd and unusual. I'm your host, Tone, and I'm joined by... John? I was going to let you say your name. I just want to keep you on your toes. And Anthony.
I'm equally as confused because you have taught him that this season was all about you calling him weird ass names when you pointed to him.
John Fertilli.
So I think that he was just confused that you called him by his God-given name.
That's fair. All right. Well, great. Now that that's
I'm a lost little lamb, brother.
Here's what we're talking about this week.
Lamb.
We're going to share some news about a sci-fi property potentially getting a reboot and a little bit more. Then we're going to play trivia, still on the Trivial Pursuit. And for our main discussion, we're continuing Nonfiction November with the rise and fall of VLAD Dracul. Which I'm pretty excited about. Spoiler alert, he impaled some people.
Just a few.
We should cancel that guy.
If that interests you at all, then stay tuned and we'll go ahead and get started with that chop talk.
Why don't you take an axe and chop it open?
All right, fellas, before we get started with that news, how are you guys today? You feeling better?
Yes, 100% better. Like a little latent, like occasional cough, but other than that, everything has been hunky-dory over in these parts.
Are you a cough and swallow, or you cough and spit it out?
Answer carefully.
I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on the scenario. I prefer to not ingest it.
Yeah.
But
he's one of those people that coughs to hide a fart. So just imagine how unbearable it was for me last week recording that episode when this guy is just cough farting the entire time throughout the whole, and he makes sure his mic is just positioned just high enough where you don't hear the toots, but I hear him and I smell him and I taste him sometimes.
I don't give a
terrible.
toot. All right, I don't give a toot if you can smell my toot.
But I'm glad that you guys are both doing better. It makes me feel a little bit less like I should have come in a plastic bubble.
Yes,
to the recording.
You didn't end up getting sick from either of us.
Just, sick with it.
Sick with it, you know what I'm saying?
But I'm doing well. I was doing a little bit of thinking about how much time I spend just like sitting in everything that I do. I sit all day at work. I sit when we record this podcast, and I have a very bony bottom. I'm not a thick bish. And
Like me.
I was like, well, I'm never going to get the motivation to exercise and do the squats required to give me a little bit more cushion for the push-in, You
getting a little BBL action? Is that what's going on?
Well, so I decided I'm going to get the Kardashian ass surgery. The fat ass Kardashian surgery.
Yeah, it's the BBL, the Brazilian butt lift.
Is
Yep.
that what that's called?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you're familiar. Can you recommend some people to me? That
Sure can. I just know that's what it's called.
John's all natural.
I really want to get my work done by one of those back alley, like Sweeney Todd type.
You want to get work done in your back alley? Right on, man.
I want some back alley surgery for my back alley, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I'm doing pretty good, too. I feel way less sick than I did last week, so that is great news for us. And today was my last day at my job, so that was super fucking weird.
But like in a good way, not that you got fired.
Quit, yeah.
You had a more betterer job lined up, hopefully.
Yeah.
You didn't accidentally exclaim, "I'd love to make." Or I want to make love to a school. Yeah,
I did. Yeah, I said and about. But it was really weird. I was just like, all right, bye. And then they're like, see ya. It's like no. Yeah,
bye forever.
One lady was like, oh yeah, but next time we'll. And I was like, no. You won't.
If I have anything to say about it, I'm never saying a single fucking one of you.
Yeah, so I had to say goodbye to some students, and there was one kid in particular that I really connected with, and he was like, oh, Mom said you're not coming back. I was like, no.
Oh, that's brutal.
I wouldn't be able to deal with that, so I commend you for...
And I was like, can a 30-year-old man plus hang out with a 6-year-old without it being weird?
No.
The answer is no, unless that 6-year-old is your child. And even then, still kind of weird, bro.
Anyway, before we get started with the news, we got some shout-outs. We got some new subscribers over on the YouTube, so I'm really excited about this. We got Search with Sarah. Thank you. We also got Ginger Curls 111. Thank you for subscribing. And we got Smithereens that subscribed today at 7 a.m. That's pretty rad.
I would be celebrating this, but we were at the beautiful 69 subscribers.
We survived at the sex number for about 3 days.
Yeah, but that's cool that we're, gaining a little bit more traction. So anyone that is subscribing, we thank you. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. We'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, every subscription helps. We got to put food on the table, guys. Okay, and while you subscribing to our channel does nothing to help us do that,
We all have day jobs that cover that pretty handily, but
just imagine that in 10 years' time, your subscription will push us to that next level. I imagine that's how long it's going to take for us to hit the big
10 more years?
10 more years, yeah, and then YouTube won't even exist at that point. Elon Musk would have bought that too and destroyed it.
oh god.
Let's go ahead and get started with some of that news.
Yeah, so as alluded to earlier, once again, Escape from New York, a movie that I think is okay, is potentially getting a reboot or direct sequel of some sort. Kurt Russell has not been confirmed to have any involvement or to be attached at this moment, but Radio Silence, which is a collective of directors who has done some other horror stuff that I don't have listed off the top of my head here, they are in talks to do that. So that's the extent of that news, is that people are just constantly trying to get a new Escape from New York movie made.
I think we're all kind of on the same boat with Escape from New York. It was on one of our very first shameful sci-fi misses, and it's a decent movie. Like, I wouldn't be mad if somebody turns it on. I'll sit and I'll watch it.
I understand why it's a cult classic.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's Carpenter and Russell during like their heyday, but I mean, still, it's not like the world's best movie.
It's also just
enjoyable.
one of those movies where I'm sure if you saw it when it came out or closer to when it came out, it probably felt more like groundbreaking and crazy and interesting, and that was the kind of the time of the badass characters like the Snake Plisskens and stuff, and you still see that character has influenced a lot of other characters moving forward.
I mean,
things like
Metal
that,
Gear
but
Solid wouldn't exist without that movie.
yeah, I was watching a thing about the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy on YouTube the other day, and they have like a character that is a mix between Snake Plissken and Ash from Evil Dead. So he has like a chainsaw hand, but he's got like the Snake Plissken outfit.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So anyway, while I'm not a huge fan of Escape from New York, I have said for a long time that I think it is a movie that definitely would be good for a reboot, or a more modernized version where, you do kind of like the Blade Runner thing where you take out a lot of the boring shit and you just make it really visually dazzling and just a little bit more interesting. Speaking of Blade Runner, this is not news, but I did learn the other day that the Jared Leto character in Blade Runner 2049 was originally written for David Bowie. And David Bowie passed away.
I mean, that checks out. I mean,
yeah, because he was like, Bowie is basically like, his image is like Blade Runner encapsulated, so Denis really wanted him to play that character, and then he basically was like, well, now I have to look for the next best thing, which at the time for some reason he thought was Jared Leto.
I mean,
he
he's
just said
looking for
was
somebody who's
like
androgynous.
the androgynous
Yeah.
rock star vibe. Anyway,
That's coincidental.
yeah, watch Moon Age Daydream, now available to rent and own.
Not physically, though.
No, not anymore. Only in spirit. Quentin Tarantino. You guys familiar with this guy? He's a little known director.
Been seeing a lot of his shorts
Tarantino.
pop up on my YouTube channel.
I thought you were gonna say like on eBay, like he's selling his shorts.
Yeah. And his socks. 'Cause I don't need these.
You buy them, salute them.
But yeah, he is a smart guy and he knows how to make a fucking movie. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, he reminds me of somebody like Scorsese, where you can tell that their entire life has been them going and watching movies and consuming film stuff, and just they're so ingrained in every aspect of it that they just speak so intelligently and passionately about the medium, like few directors really do.
Well, I mean, for someone who also loves the film medium, right? I think we all do. To see someone talk about it passionately like that is enthralling.
Yeah, it also makes you feel less like you're a weirdo movie geek when you're like, oh, okay, well, he's successful and he talks about movies the same way I do.
He is a weirdo movie geek, though.
Yeah.
I mean, in all of the best ways.
Yeah, maybe
described.
Tarantino wasn't the best example.
Yeah, that Quentin Tarantino is really cool, right?
He did. I mean, this isn't really horror sci-fi, but it's Quentin Tarantino, so fuck it. He said that his next project is going to be an 8-part television series coming out next year.
Shit.
I mean that it makes so much fucking sense. I mean, if you think about
they did
how
that with
many
Hateful Eight, like they made it into the extended miniseries thing.
Yeah. But
Oh,
think,
did they?
Think
On
about
Netflix,
how many of his projects, especially when you really get like the actual like director's cut versions of them, would have been better suited for a long-term television show. There's a ton of them.
Well, I mean, we think about Flanagan, right, and what he's able to do with like an 8-part series. Like, I mean, I think Tarantino can make something
Well,
on
and
par with what Flanagan's doing in
But he's
Tarantino style.
He's proved that the model for both is totally viable for the same guy. Because Flanagan also really knocks it out the park with an hour and a half, 2 hour long movie as well.
Yeah.
Also, great TikTok account.
yes.
So good.
Did you see the one with
Mike Flanagan, not Tarantino.
Mike Flanagan?
I don't know. About
Yeah.
Tarantino,
Did you see the one with Aaron Paul that he did the other day?
Yes, where he's like, who would I want to cast to be in House of Usher? And then
and then he just pans the camera over, and Aaron Paul's just standing there, and Aaron Paul just looks at him. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And Flanagan's like, "Sorry, I just anyway." Next question. But yeah, this also to me is a cute little loophole in Tarantino's statement about how many movies he was going to make before the end of his career. He recently in an interview said that he thinks that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is his best movie that he's ever made. So I can see why he'd be like, now I'm going to pivot into TV because that kind of gets me out of. Yeah, but I think I kind of get the feeling from his interviews that even he realizes that like it's going to be so fucking hard for him to top the movies that he's already made. Like he's just made so many good.
Like how do you stop?
Yeah.
Well, and there's
Like,
all these
Scorsese.
There's
He's
all
never
these
going to stop until he's dead.
Now, there's
or
all
like
these
Spielberg.
talks that he's been about making follow-ups, like doing a third Kill Bill or following up off of Pulp Fiction or answering the question whether or not all of these things are actually really connected in one universe. And being able to answer those questions is a lot easier to do in television format. I mean, imagine being able to take what we've already established and all of the groundwork that's been laid out so nicely in Kill Bill and then spread that out over like an eight episode like miniseries. And it's not a movie. You still get to tell the same story, and with as big as television has been, and especially with streaming, how big streaming has been, you could definitely get on board to do that.
Well, even if they did like a prequel, like what was the Assassination Squad doing in their heyday?
Yeah, that'd be sick.
I'd watch the fuck out of that.
Yeah, they could do.
But
yeah,
he uses like 10 movies very loosely because Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2 count as one.
yeah.
And then he doesn't count like the Grindhouse stuff because that was something he did with Rodriguez.
The W's are coming out, baby.
Also, I think Tarantino is just a fan. Tarantino is just a fan of just making like bold statements. So I could definitely see him making the bold statement that he's only going to make 10 movies, and then that was 10 years ago, and now he's saying, okay, maybe that's not the case, and I want to keep making movies.
He's like, maybe I've still got a whole lot of life left in me, and I'd like to continue to do the thing
There
that I
are
like.
so many more people's feet I want to see on screen. You guys familiar with the work of Fede Alvarez?
Sí, claro.
The two works?
Also did the Girl in the Spider's Web.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. So,
Three works.
Girl in the Spider's Web, Don't Breathe, and Evil Dead. I'm a fan of 2 out of 3 of those things, only because I haven't seen the Girl in the Spider's Web.
Not
Anyway,
super great.
That's what I've heard. I just really wanted Fincher to do another one, so I feel betrayed. So, studios, they can't let shit die. If it's an IP...
they doing Don't Be 3?
No. Fede Alvarez is doing an Alien movie.
Okay.
What?
I thought there's a bunch of alien stuff happening. Like Scott's supposed to do one.
Since we started the show, we talked about
There's supposed to
Ridley
be the
Scott doing alien
Noah
movies. We
show.
talked about Neil Blomkamp from District 9. For a long time was supposed to do a Sigourney Weaver alien movie, and now Fede Alvarez is the newest.
But there was is it Noah Crowley? What is his name?
Noah Hawley from Legion and Fargo is still supposedly doing an alien TV show.
I thought that was like already finished filming, and that Ridley Scott had just been talking a ton of fucking trash about it.
This is crazy. Anyway, what'd they say about Fede?
Just that he is the person who's doing this new Alien movie, and that an actress named Kaylee Spaney is in talks to star in the movie. So because they're already in talks to have people star in this, it sounds like this is actually moving forward. I know some people are of the opinion, like, let Ridley finish his vision. I'm like, after Covenant, like, I don't really give a shit about what Ridley Scott wants to do with that franchise. If he wants to continue making, like, esoteric, religious commentary movies, that's cool. But I don't have a problem with also having just Fede Alvarez fucked up alien movies if that's the direction that he wants to go with that.
I mean, the only thing that I would have liked to have seen from Ridley is to have him not had the studios get in the way of him actually making a real sequel to Prometheus, because Prometheus was a good movie, and we've all been on record as agreeing with that.
Yeah, I enjoy Prometheus a lot.
Yeah, check out our Alien franchise rewatch from our Space Camp season or summer that we did. This is not in my news list, but I saw an interview today with the director of Ad Astra, and apparently that movie is like completely butchered from his original vision. And he was talking about how like his director's cut is actually shorter, but expands on some of the like Donald Sutherland's in that movie and only shows up for like one scene. He was like, yeah, there's more with those characters. Most of the score that the guy wrote for the movie wasn't used, and they used other stuff. All of the like narration that Brad Pitt does, most of the movie was fucked with by Brad Pitt. He was like, I want to make it more like, you know, front audience friendly, so he came in and basically like recut it and added voiceover and stuff.
I found it
so
enjoyable.
that makes me think like, well, you know, we'll probably never see it, but I would love to see what the original vision for it was. A Quiet Place, Day One, the prequel movie that we're supposed to be getting, I think next year or the year after, with Lupita Nyong'o.
Is Krasinski behind this? Or
Not,
this is his
not
own
directing,
thing?
I think producing. Because I think,
But he's supposed to be doing a sequel still, right?
yeah, the official third movie in like 2 years or whatever. I don't give a shit. I mean, I like the first two Quiet Place movies, but I can only imagine that more Quiet Place will just be the same Quiet Place we've already gotten twice. So
We said that when we got the second Quiet Place, and then we ate our words for a hot episode.
We did, but those
in
movies are one long movie.
Yeah, and also in hindsight, very forgettable. Like, I can't remember a lot about the second movie. And this is just my opinion. I'm just saying, like, I feel like the Quiet Place movies are cool. I enjoy them. But to me, those first two movies do feel like they're kind of just the same movie twice. And so I don't think it needed to be a franchise. I would have been fine with there just being one Quiet Place movie, because the first one's really good.
Yeah.
I really liked the first one. And the second one to me was just like, it's forgettable, I think, because it didn't do enough new stuff. Anyway, the piece of news here is that Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things, the new kid with that shirt.
Yeah.
Is it
This
Eddie?
one. Yes.
Eddie Munson. He's in talks to be a part of this Quiet Place Day One movie.
I mean,
so good to see that.
So this would be kind of an extended version of the scene with Krasinski at the restaurant or like the convenience store. Or
Yeah,
whatever the
actually
fuck.
seeing like how shit hit the fan.
Okay.
Could be a different area too, but I mean,
Oh, that's a good point.
I if they do something cool with it, I'm fine with having more. It's not like it's gonna upset me.
It just gives me kind of Conjuring vibes, where it's like, now we're gonna make spin-offs.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
different characters.
it's
and all
a
this
lot.
Stuff. And I'm like, I just don't think that the concept of A Quiet Place is interesting enough to warrant an entire franchise. I think it was good for one. It's like Don't Breathe. I'm like, I don't know why the fuck they made a sequel to that. And then watching it, I still didn't understand why the fuck they made a sequel to it, because it's a premise that really only works once effectively, in my opinion.
I like seeing franchises go for way too long, because when we were growing up, a lot of the established franchises were already kind of at their end. Like we were led to believe Halloween was at its end. Jason was basically at its end. Freddy was at its end. Like, we didn't get new Freddy movies in that franchise until the remake. You know
but
what I mean?
then we've watched a franchise like Scream go on for way longer than it should have and possibly ever made sense, and still make 4 great movies and a really, really good 5th one.
And it's cool for me to see it. And like, we're seeing Chucky, but Chucky was done for a while.
Yeah.
And now we get to see it keep going. And
This is like the new blood.
that's cool. And I felt the same way when Saw came out. I was like, oh, this is cool that we're seeing a franchise go on for way too long and have a ridiculous amount, like 10 sequels. This is ridiculous. And so in that regard, that excites me, just because being old school horror fans, that's what got us kind of into it, is these long running ridiculousness movies.
Excuse me. I agree. On top of all of that, also, I just wanted to say that it makes me happy to see that off the back of Stranger Things, obviously these actors continue to get other bigger work. Sadie Sink is having a fucking year because she's in The Whale. And it potentially could be nominated for awards, because I've heard she's fucking fantastic in that.
Oh, I've heard that. I mean, obviously, I think that Brendan Fraser, I don't think it's going to be much of a contest. I think that he is going to win the Oscar this year for that movie, from what I've heard.
I can't say anything because I haven't seen it, but I think with the talk that's been going on, like, yeah, and the conversation around him, I'd be surprised if those politics didn't play into him just winning, because it's a comeback. It's a big deal. It's the reconnaissance deal or whatever. You know?
Yeah. And it's going to make for good TV. But it would also make for good TV if he didn't. You know what I mean? Like, people would turn in.
I can't wait to see. I couldn't tell you what that movie's about, and I can't wait to fucking see it.
Yeah.
But I mean, Sadie Sink was one of our favorite parts if not our favorite part of the last
Oh,
season.
no,
of Stranger
100%
Things.
she was.
amazing.
Well, and I am pretty sure that after the Max or the Dear Billy episode from this newest season, that episode on its own is probably going to get her hired in a bunch of.
It's punched her star ticket. She is now like bona fide, like can be cast as like a main
That's
a
awesome.
main character
Good for
in
her.
anything.
Yeah, we've seen some of them blow up. I mean, Millie's had a couple movies.
She just came out with
Finn's
Enola
had
Holmes
a couple
too.
movies.
Yeah, Finn had a couple movies. So some of them, I think
Caitlin
Matarazzi has a movie or a show or something.
he had a show on Netflix that was
Prank
separate.
Encounters.
Yeah, that one, and then he also
He was in a movie called Honor Society recently that I watched.
he's in
That was
talks
actually
to
pretty cool.
join a couple of different Broadway casts because he's a
for him.
beautiful singer.
Wow. Yeah, so I mean that's cool. I like seeing them. A lot of times kids will be in these things and then go nowhere.
Yeah,
Like Andy.
yeah, and I like that they're not just appreciated because they become these phenomenon characters like the Eddie character did for Stranger Things. Like they continue to work past that, and that's super cool to see. Jordan Peele's Monkey Paw Productions has launched a podcast on Spotify. It's called
great.
Quiet Part Loud.
Great.
And it's, I think, like 10-ish 20-minute episodes, and it's supposed to be basically Jordan Peele said that they wanted to make like a truly horrifying audio experience. So I haven't checked it out yet, but if you're
Basically said
interested
I think they said their inspiration is War of the Worlds.
your mom, War of the Worlds, that makes sense. And yeah, so I haven't checked it out, but
his mom is a terrifying audio experience. I can either confirm or deny it.
Mom, the meatloaf.
Fuck.
I mean, all I can say is when I've stayed with her, she's driven me up a wall. So yeah, I'll check that out and I'll report back on what I think of it. We talked in text about this other piece of news, but James Wan's Atomic Monster production company and Jason Blum's Blumhouse, hey, you heard about it, are in early talks to merge their companies into one mega horror powerhouse. I would love it personally if they called this Monster House. And they just made Monster House sequels. But this makes sense to me because I feel like where James Wan's career has gone with producing so many other projects in this like Conjuring universe and these extra Insidious movies and all this and the Saw movies and all that, like he started the Blum model of like make a tiny low budget horror movie that explodes into, you know, sequels and craziness. And I guess that really the stuff that I found most interesting in this is that they are not going to change the names of the production companies when they merge. They'll continue to still brand under Blumhouse and Atomic Monster. It's just going to mean that they're going to have a wider reach, especially Atomic Monster is going to have a bigger reach to and more money basically by having Blumhouse behind them. Because I think Blumhouse is a lot more of a household name at this point than Atomic Monster is.
Well, house is literally in the name.
Yeah, and they've worked together for years. I mean, Blumhouse produced all of the Insidious movies.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. But
Plus,
yeah, I mean,
plus
that
then
makes sense.
you know he can step in and hit a quick celeb shot and drop a nasty horror banger every once in a while. That's his own.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I've never. I think James Wan is. I love James Wan when he's actually directing a movie. But anything that he produces, I'm just like, good for you, man. You're making money. But I'm not a huge fan unless it's Saw. I love that whole franchise, no matter how terrible it gets. And then the news I wanted to say for last because it's sad. Everybody already knows about this, but I did want to mention it because he was a very important person in my life. But Kevin Conroy, most known as the voice of the animated Batman,
From the 90s.
yeah, from Batman the Animated Series and the Arkham games and a million other Batman properties because he was such a beloved voice actor. Passed away at the age of 66. I was very sad about this.
I didn't realize he was that young.
Yeah, he had been battling cancer for a little while, I think. But he was my Batman when I was a kid. Like I love Keaton and I grew up with those movies, but like, in terms of like the voice that I imagined when I would read Batman comics or look at a picture of Batman was always Kevin Conroy. Just like for a lot of people, the Joker is Mark Hamill. And Mark Hamill put out like a really beautiful statement about how close they were and how much, you know, and how sad it was. And really a lot of people were devastated by this, which I think just shows how fucking amazing and influential that Batman animated series was, that so many people feel like that's my Batman. Yeah, see, even Zig is like, no, Kevin!
But yeah, I mean, not even just the animated series, but the animated films, which are in a lot of people's eyes considered to be even better than any of the live action.
Yeah, a lot of people say Mask of the Phantasm is
Yeah.
the best Batman movie, and that's an animated
Or
spin-off of
Under the Red Hood. I mean, there's a
Mm-hmm.
ton of different ones that are like considered like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 films.
Under the Tuscan Sun.
Yeah. Under the Tuscan Skin.
Yeah, so this made me sad to see. Everybody's fucking dropping like flies, all my heroes, but
It's so sad.
I'm in the mood to go watch some Batman animated movies now, because yeah, I mean we've had a lot of Batmans, but he'll still always be the one that I hear in my head. And what cooler legacy to have than to have somehow put like a forever stamp on a character that is totally impermanent. Like we have a new Batman every couple years now, and it's for a lot of people it's like, yeah, but Kevin Conroy is Batman.
Yeah.
So I'm Batman. Yeah, R.I.P. in peace, Kevin Conroy. And
All right, so before we get into the trivia, just remember that if you want to, please submit some kind of text or audio or video to us so that we can include it in our 200th episode. We're really looking forward to seeing what you guys submit. Just a hey, or we love your show, or you guys fucking suck. Whatever you want to do, we're cool with it as long as it's appropriate, I guess. What's like no nudes?
No, I mean, yeah, as long as they're like, as long as it's appropriate to be posted on YouTube.
There we go. Perfect. Thanks. Beautifully said, John. And if you haven't already, then join that Creep Cold, because we just talked about Chucky.
yeah, we're working our way all the way through the season. And I do want to clarify, by the way, if you have some stuff that's a little bit too explicit for YouTube, go ahead and send that to internetdarlinganthony@gmail.com.
All right.
He's
that's
working
gonna
on
wrap it
something.
up for Chop Talk. We'll go ahead and get started with that trivia.
That Christmas house of wax, the fog, piranha. It's one of those, right? Right?
All right, we are playing Trivial Pursuit. Again, Anthony's coming off a win, your first solo win of the season. How's it feel?
I don't want to toot my own horn, but I did fucking awesome last
Yeah,
week.
BB.
That's what I gotta say, yeah.
Right, so do you want to do a song or you want me to do a song?
Mine's short enough that I think we can do both.
Okay, go for
And
it.
I want to see if John, because mine is I can only do the chorus, but think on theme with what we're talking about today.
Okay.
Your trivia tune this week is trivia. Trivia.
I got nothing.
And if they get me in the sun,
Is it
Goes
My Chemical
down.
yeah, it's
Romance? The Vampire.
Vampires Will Never Hurt You.
Yeah.
by My Chemical Romance.
Off of I Brought You My Bullets, or whatever.
Yeah,
The first album.
Yeah.
now the challenge is just do literally any song and it'll be better than what I just did. So go for it.
Okay. I'm trying to remember how to. Okay.
Don't get nervous now.
It's trivia, 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 trivia. That no,
So I mean, like, it sounds so familiar.
that is Istanbul or Constantinople.
That's what I thought it was. I couldn't have told you what it was.
That's nobody's business but the Turks.
I like that. Nice.
On brand, or well, on theme.
Yeah.
My brand.
My brand. All right. I'm going to read to John. John's going to read to Anthony. Anthony will read back to me. And what we're going to do is go through 6 categories, reading a question. The other person's going to give us an answer, and we will crown a winner or a tied winner by the end of it.
Would you say we're doing that any differently than usual, or is that in a typical
I would say that's probably
fashion?
typical fashion.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
John, hit us with that first category, brother.
First category is monster.
All right, buddy. Who directed Cloverfield from 2008?
Oh, I don't want to get the last name wrong. Oh, is it?
Wrong.
John's deep in thought right now. For the audio listeners.
Is it
He's making a
making a
sound with
Matt.
Okay.
Is it Reeves?
That is correct.
Okay.
It is
Good
Matt
job.
Reeves.
Yeah.
I learned recently, and I can't remember the movie, but J.J. Abrams did the music for some like low budget horror movie back in the day,
Really?
and we gotta find that. We gotta
Didn't know
check
he
that
was
out.
musically talented. How do you get lens flares into a score? is the question that J.J. Abrams was asking himself.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I wonder what happens if I just shine this bright ass flashlight at my soundboard.
That's pretty fucking funny.
All right, Anthony. In Signs from 2002, what kind of headgear does the son of protagonist Graham Hess believe protects against alien waves?
Is it a tinfoil hat?
It is literally a tinfoil hat.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that scene where they're all just like sitting in the room with their little conehead tinfoil hats. Tone for your monster category, and a question for which I will need an answer. In The Birds from 1968.
Birds.
What color is the iconic outfit protagonist Melanie Daniels wears while trapped in Bodega Bay?
Istanbul,
Man.
Constantinople.
You're like, I thought this movie was in black and white. It's like, I don't know, gray, dark gray, off gray.
I will say I'm torn between two.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go with green.
Ooh, it's green.
Oh, yes. I was either that or blue. You know, I can see the outfit. Anyway, cool. So we're all on the board.
We're all on the
Great
board.
week. Way better than I
start
started
than
off.
last week. Yeah.
All right, John, hit me with that next category.
Next category is gore/disturbing.
All right, John, your next question is, in Cannibal Holocaust from 1980, at what university is rescue team member Harold Monroe an anthropologist? Looking for the name of the school.
These are
That's a deepie.
these are tough. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Deep.
We'll say the University of Cambridge.
Oh, it is New York University,
Yeah.
NYU.
Like I said, as soon as you said Cannibal Holocaust, I was like, all right,
Yeah, fair enough.
whatever.
I was gonna say Miskatonic.
Miskatonic.
That's from the Lovecraft. Hit me with your question. Fire away.
Save it for next week, dude.
In Saw from 2004, what foot does Dr. Lawrence Gordon? What foot is Dr. Lawrence Gordon forced to cut off in order to survive?
You got a 1 in 3
Vidi-
chance,
you got-
man.
Oh man, this makes me so angry too because I've seen this movie so many fucking times. This is like my comfort film. And I can't remember which foot he saws off his body.
You got a coin toss, brother.
Well, let's think about it. Break it down. What side of the room is he on?
He's on the... I mean, I guess it depends on which direction you're looking from, but...
Your perception is like your reality, man.
He's
Yeah,
on,
but
he's on the
there's a
far
two-way
side.
mirror.
He's on the far side, so if you're looking at the mirror, he's on the right side by the door. So
Yeah.
I would imagine it would be his right foot that would be chained to the wall. So that would be the one that he would have to cut off. But I'm not 100% sure because it could be his left foot extended and chained to the furthest wall. But I'm just gonna say his right foot.
Right foot is the correct answer.
Yeah.
Yes, I fucking knew it. No question about it.
No, but I think that's exactly what it is because he's on that side and he needs to face Lee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that makes the most sense. I feel you.
And then he comes back in later films. Tone, your question, for which I will need an A. In The Hills Have Eyes from 2006. What are the names of the 2 Carter family German shepherds?
What? Hey, you want my Cannibal Holocaust question?
Mars and Jupiter.
Oh, no, sorry, it was the Baja Men. No, it was it's Beauty and Beast.
Okay.
We get a lot of Hills Have Eyes questions. Both
2
of,
back-to-back
Yeah.
weeks, huh?
Hills have thighs, you know what I'm saying?
That puts the man in the lead.
I'm the man.
Thanks for remembering and respecting my pronouns.
All right, John. What's the next caddy?
Next category is psychological.
All right, your next question here, Jennifer. In what century does The Village from 2004 take place? Is it the 18th century, the 19th century, the 20th century, or the 21st century?
It's the 21st century.
That is correct.
I was like, okay, so if it's the 1900s, is that the 18th century? Is that
What's the math here? I'm not some sort of like historical mathematician.
a math magician?
Anthony, who directed the film Get Out from 2017? And while you're at it, get the fuck out of here with this bullshit.
Jordan Peele, of Key and Peele fame.
Back of the card says Jordan Peele of Comedy Central series Key and Peele.
Yeah, dude,
Pretty darn close.
I'm so on it. It's crazy. I know this game like the back of my hand. Tone, your question, for which I need an answer. What is the name of the isolated island upon which The Wicker Man from 1973 is set?
Oh, man.
We've
Call
definitely
it
gotten
Not
this
the Bees.
question
Not
at some
the
point.
bees. Somervale. What the fuck is up with my dog?
Yeah.
Hey, Summer Isle. Summer
Guile.
What's your final answer?
Summer Isle.
It is Summer Isle.
Oh shit!
Nice.
Thank goodness you corrected yourself.
Thanks, Zig.
Thanks for the stall, brother.
Yeah, I'll take it. All right, great. So what's happening now? We're at 2 and he's at 3.
I believe so.
Right on, and we're moving into
Paranormal.
John. What are the names of the 2 siblings of Thomason in The Witch?
Oh, fuck.
I be the witch of the wood.
I be the witch of the wood? Question mark.
But what be my name?
Adam and Susie.
It is Mercy and Jonas.
Yeah, it's been a while. Been a while since I've cashed in on a little.
Been a while
Saw you.
since I saw Anya.
Anthony, what is the name of the vengeful entity that emerges from a well in The Ring from 2002?
That's Samara.
Last name?
Samara.
Did it really ask for a last name?
Weaving.
That's what I was after.
Samara.
These nuts.
Samara, as portrayed by DeVay Chase, who's also the younger sister in Donnie Darko.
Well, there you go.
A little bit of trivia for you there.
What's a fuck ass?
How does one suck a fuck?
How exactly does one suck a fuck? Tone, your question, and I'm gonna need an answer, unfortunately. For
I
this
hope
one.
I get you one.
In the Amityville Horror from 1979, which character becomes obsessed with cutting firewood? We just talked about
I
these
know,
Amityville peeps last week.
Mr. Lutz.
I mean, I'm gonna need a first name that isn't Mr., but you're close. You got the right character. What is Mr. Lutz's first name?
Popo Shisho Lutz.
Fuck, man.
The harrowing experiences of Popo Shisho Lutz.
Now on Disney Plus.
You guys check out the Santa Clauses?
Is it out?
Yeah, I watched some of the first episode.
And?
Made me kind of warm and fuzzy inside because
Ooh.
I'm just a big fan of the Tim Allen Santa Claus movies.
Doesn't
Not
he
of Tim
bitch
Allen as a person, but
Doesn't
of
he
his-
bitch about like Christmas being canceled and shit?
There's a lot of. I mean, it's very much like it's modernized. Obviously, they have a bunch of like market analysts looking at pie charts in the beginning and wondering where like 17% of their. It's like an Amazon company, and they're like, "Who's this 17% still delivering packages every year?" And so, yeah, and then one girl's like, yeah, so my friends at school are saying that Santa Claus is over. And her dad, who's played by Cal Penn, is like, well, I mean, no, Santa Claus is real. He's not fake. She's like, no, I didn't say he was fake. I said he's over.
What's my question?
What's Mr. Lutz's first name?
Fuck, man.
Fuckman Lutz is the correct answer.
Jonathan.
Oh, fuck. It's George.
Damn.
I mean, you weren't far
But,
off.
I mean, really, it's up to John whether we should give that to you because you did say Mr. Lutz and it is the right character. It's up to John whether he wants to be cutthroat enough on this. I'm putting all the pressure on him.
That's not fair at all.
No, I wouldn't give it to you.
I mean, if you, that's you've given the answer then.
Like he's at Hellcat. No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, if it was my
You're like,
decision,
it was my decision,
but it's not my decision. It's John's.
I don't know. It's cool.
Why is this on me? I'm never the referee.
It's cool.
His feelings aren't hurt. Not really.
Well, then let's move on.
Yeah. Okay. What's category?
Where are we at score-wise?
I don't fucking know anymore. How many points do you have?
He has 4.
Okay. Great.
I have 2 still?
Yep.
Question mark?
And I have 2.
Okay.
Great. 2.5.
2.5 men. Filmed in front of a live ostrich.
Yellow category. Hit me with it, John.
Live studio ostrich.
That's how you get to one of those nope situations.
Category is killer.
What actor voiced Chucky in the Child's Play series from 1988 to 2017?
That card is incorrect because he been doing that shit a whole lot longer, baby. That Brad Dourif.
That is
energy.
correct,
But he
sir.
looks a lot old.
But I look much older.
It's one of those reverse Benjamin Button situations.
All right. This might be the first actually tough one on your card. Who directed The Silence of the Lambs from 1991?
Ooh.
Is it Jonathan Demme?
It is Jonathan Demme.
Oh my god.
Actually really helps that I just saw an interview with Scorsese where I guess he was in the process of making Silence of the Lambs, but he wanted to keep all of the extremely fucked up stuff from the book in. And he was like, that movie would not have been nearly as successful if I had made it, because Demme was able to like get to the heart of it and figure out what actually like was the important stuff. And he's like, I would have just made it 3 hours long and put all of the fucked up gory shit in it.
I mean, check for one, please.
Yeah, no, I would have loved to have seen Scorsese Silence of the Lambs. It would have been awesome, but yeah, that helped me remember that guy's name. So there you go. Tone. Here's your cue, and I'm gonna need that A. What Lord of the Rings actress played Kristen in The Strangers from 2008?
Liv Tyler.
Yeah, did you know she also played Arwen in the Lord of the Rings film series?
Yes.
Did you know she's also related to Steven Tyler?
Yeah, Steven Tyler's her
Dream
aunt,
on.
right?
You
I don't
killed
know.
me.
All I
Say,
gotta-
dude looks like a lady.
I was gonna say all I can say about Steven Tyler is dude looks like a lady.
My buddy Jeff, who did the music for our intro, he used to think it was "Do It Like a Lady."
Do it like a lady.
Which, I mean, totally fair, yeah.
Especially if he heard that song in Mrs. Doubtfire for the first time,
Yeah.
like I did.
But that also is "Dude Looks Like a Lady."
Yeah, really just on the nose with that song choice.
Yeah. You
But-
have 3?
Did I get? Yes, I do have 3.
I got 3, and Anthony's got, what, 5?
Yeah, I mean it's long since over, but
It's in the bag, baby.
we do still have the international category to do.
We do still have the international category to do, and your question, John, is what is the profession of protagonist
Protagonist.
Sarah
Sarah.
in Inside Out from 2007? Did you correct Sarah to Sarah?
I did.
you took out the H.
Because H's are you.
Wait, why do we have a question about a Pixar movie on this card?
So can you give me the protagonist Sarah, Inside Out? You
What's
said?
her job?
It's pretty hard to hear the question when you keep interrupting, isn't it, John?
It is. Is she a photographer?
Dude, you were like one of those like.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Where did you pull that out of?
I
Your ass.
said you my ass. I'm married.
He
to
went
one.
very zen, like Tibetan throat singer there. Reminds me of the Dune score. You are the Quetzalcoatl Haderach.
I used the voice. Anthony, in A Tale of Two Sisters from 2003, which character is younger? Sue Me or Sue Yen?
Fuck me.
Fuck you. That's pretty good.
I've seen this movie. It's a very good movie, but I don't know if I could remember which one is older or which one is
Once
younger.
again,
it's not going to matter.
The sweep of the
but-
card comes down to a coin toss.
Yeah, but
How much have you ever won or lost?
all my friends call me the
in a
cleaning
coin
lady
toss?
for a reason. Because I sweep. What were the choices again?
Sumi.
Sumi
and Soo Yun.
Well, Soo Yun kind of sounds like Soo Young.
Ooh, okay.
Like she's younger.
All right.
So I'm going to go with that one.
That is a sweep of the card, my friend.
Woo! Better pay me for those cleaning services. I don't work for free. Tone, oddly enough, we got another question from the movie Raw from 2016, and I'm going to need an answer to this question. What is protagonist Justine studying to become?
Justine. R.L. Justine.
Is it a veterinarian?
She is studying to be a veterinarian.
Nice.
That's one of those dudes that come back from war, right? I'm a Vietnam veterinarian. The horror. The horror.
There's a lot of horror in this room right now.
Well, I think congratulations. You got a 2 OG streak.
Dude, I'm so excited that we're back into trivia that I'm decent at.
Well, you were good at the last one.
Yeah, but I
Last
think
But so were we.
Yeah.
everybody with a head on their shoulders is good at that
Anybody
trivia.
that watched a horror movie.
Yeah.
Hey, you got a pulse? You'd probably be pretty good at this horror game.
Pretty much. That's going to wrap it up for trivia. We hope that you enjoyed that. Some of you are going to get some ads. Some of you are going to get a reminder about the creep cult. But either way, we're going to take a short break, and we'll get right back with our discussion of Vlad Dracul.
Real quick, like this video, subscribe.
Join the creep cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/porcelain peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more. Join the creep cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/porcelain peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more.
Hey, you want to see something really scary?
Welcome back.
It's the sound a vampire makes.
Jesus.
Welcome back. We hope that you had a nice little break there. We're going to continue Nonfiction November, but this week we are talking about Vlad the Impaler, who may or may not have been the inspiration for Dracula.
Yeah.
So I guess we can get started with his papa.
His Popo
Oh.
Shisho.
Oh.
Popo
Oh.
Shisho Vlad.
Oh, Vlad the second Dracul.
Dracul, which means
Dragon.
dragon, because he was a part of the Order of the Dragon. Which
Dragon
is
these nuts across your face. Got him.
a Christian group of nobles who swore to defend the cross from its enemies.
Yeah, so the Ottoman Empire was a pretty big thorn in everyone's side during this time because they were basically conquering all of Europe and had their ginormous armies and were seen as enemies to the Christian religion. Really going through the biography of Vlad the III.
Which is what Dracula.
Yeah.
Vlad Dracula.
Yeah, so
is also known as. So his name is Vlad the Third. Dracula means just son of dragon, of the dragon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that is not like that's a royal title because of this Order of the Dragon. So something that I do want to briefly mention is that I don't think that really any of this discussion until the very end is going to have anything to do with Bram Stoker's Dracula, because as I was doing research into this, I realized more and more that there is very little connection.
It's loose. It's very loose. And
Loose if he even existed in the first place beyond him having read the name somewhere, which I'll get to.
Right, yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll talk about it. But he was born in Transylvania.
Yeah, which is modern-day Romania. So, Vlad the Third, Dracula, was born sometime between 1428 and 1431.
In Sigishara.
Yeah, his it's unknown. It's a mystery who his mother was because Vlad the Second, Dracul, was married at the time, but had, he was a fuckboy.
He's out there getting some strange.
Yeah, even
one
during the
could
research,
even
it was like his older brother, his younger brother, his half brother. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, so I think for the rest of this episode, we can just call him Vladdy Daddy. Because
I'm good with that.
Yeah, Papa Dracul.
And we could just call Vlad Dracula.
Yeah.
When I go to the club, I like to pop a couple Dracul. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. So the Ottomans had been expanding into Eastern and Central Europe, bringing with them rival religions that were rivaling the Catholic and Orthodox, the Orthodox Christians, who had dominated the region. But on top of all of this, there was also a lot of just regular secular power struggle infighting throughout what is modern day Romania, so Transylvania, Wallachia,
and Dracul was voivode for Valosia. Is that right?
The one with the W?
Yeah.
I just have been pronouncing it Wallachia because Wallachia, because that's what they say in the Castlevania show.
So he was this military warlord leader of this country, and because of that, Dracula was next in line for the throne.
Yeah, so he did have an older brother early on in their life. Basically Vlad II was supposed to be supporting the emperor and the Ottomans, but he decided to kind of betray them, turn against them. And so what the Ottomans ended up doing is they took him prisoner. They took Vlad III prisoner and his older brother prisoner. They eventually ended up letting Vlad II go, but they kept
Radu.
They kept Radu and Vlad as prisoners. And I guess they were actually treated pretty well for the several years that they were prisoners here. They were taught things like mathematics, logic, warfare, horseback riding.
Yeah, and even before that, Vlad was taught princess because he was considered a prince, right? So
trained by like Greek and Roman scholars from Constantinople.
Yeah.
So
I was reading it and I was like, oh, it's like the little Nemo scene. He's like going through and doing the dance. He's like, well, you got to learn your manners, you got to learn how to dress, and given this kind of air of superiority even before he was captured. But yeah, he learned horseback riding, swimming, battle strategies, and like you said, history and politics while captured.
Yeah,
hostage, right?
And I think something important to
and he was 11 at the time.
Yeah, so that's an important thing to point out, is that when we're talking about the things that he did as an adult that are obviously what he is infamous for, he from day one was being taught, especially in the place where he was, where it was just constant battles between who was holding what throne where, and all this infighting, and then this big, the Ottomans constantly invading and taking over places. Which I'm wondering, what was the deal with the Ottomans? Did they just feel like they were the Ottoman out? Is that why they were so angry?
Tired of people stepping on the rest of their feet off.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought of that joke in the car. I thought I had to slip that in somewhere.
From the research that I came across, he was the more difficult between the two.
Yeah,
and his brother was kind of just like subversive and.
Well, because they were taught the Quran when they were imprisoned, and his older brother ended up converting to Islam and becoming like a monk in a monastery, and that's part of the reason why he didn't end up being the person to take over the throne. Vlad II ended up being that person. Vlad was very much more like, fuck this shit, like I'm not dealing with any of this, and he ended up being punished a lot because of it. There are differing reports about how brutal the punishment was. Like some things say that he was sexually assaulted, whipped, but he also, beyond his own torture and imprisonment, he also was able to see how the Turks instilled fear in the people outside of where he was being kept captive.
Torture, brother.
And learned the language, which comes in handy later for him. I think it's crazy that his dad was just like, all right then, and then left them.
I mean, the guy had enough kids. He was probably just like, what's losing a couple? It's whatever.
I can afford to lose a couple.
That's what you do in those days. You have as many kids as you could, so that way if you lose a couple,
so eventually Vlad II betrayed the Ottoman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily for the kids, they weren't killed because of this.
Yeah, and the Ottomans had actually grown to like Dracula. They had grown to like Vlad III and thought that he was a pretty neat dude for being like 16 years old. But his father, ended up turning against the Ottomans. He and his eldest son both ended up being kidnapped by the Ottomans and executed.
Yes. And Vlad swore his vengeance.
Yeah, and so in Vlad II's place, a new leader called Vladislav II, which this can get very confusing because apparently everybody in medieval Romania was named Vlad or some variation of it. But yeah, he was,
Vladislav. Wasn't there like Vlad the monk?
yeah. So Vladislav II was put on the throne by the pro-Hungarian governor of Transylvania called Hunyada.
It's John Hunyada, right?
John Hunyada, yeah. And so eventually Vlad III and Radu were freed. Vlad ended up returning to the principality, and he began a campaign to take over the throne and become the voivode, which we said earlier is kind of like a prince or a warlord of the territory.
Right.
Because, again, his brother had decided to convert religion and become a monk, so he wasn't really interested in taking the throne.
And he ends up taking it in 1448.
Yeah.
Briefly, though. So, yeah, we'll get to how it happens, but he ends up taking the throne 3 times.
Yeah, when you look at the dates that he reigned, there's like 6 different year ranges, because he pretty much everybody in this story, they would rule for a short amount of time, and then some army would sweep in and destroy the whole place and kill everybody, take over, and then
It was a
somebody else
hotbed.
would come.
I mean, there was always constantly warring going back and forth, and
because of the religious angle too, there were the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor. They all had these different ideas of who they wanted to put in power in order for different religions to be the majority religion in different areas. So there was just a lot of infighting going on.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the first time he held the throne was only for a couple months, and then he lost it to his cousin.
Yeah, so I have here what followed after he first took the throne were 29 separate reigns of 11 separate rulers. From 1418 to 1476.
Holy cow.
Vlad ruled 3 times during that time period. It was from this chaos and a patchwork of local boyar factions that Vlad sought first the throne and then to establish a strong state with bold actions and outright terror. So he pretty much, from when he took the throne, decided that in order for him to get this shit in order, because he was obviously, one, he wanted revenge on all of the people who had betrayed his father. So one of the first things that he did was invited all of these leaders and noblemen, or as they're referred to here, boyars, to a banquet, to a dinner, and then
you're that far away.
and then basically took all of the oldest ones and impaled them. And then
crazy.
some like Red Wedding fucking Game of Thrones shit.
Yeah, impaled them, and then had all the younger, more fit to work ones labor for years on building his castle. That was like partially in ruin, and was like, cool, you're going to build my castle now.
Yeah, so he spent a lot of time between the first time he was on the throne and this time being on the throne in hiding. And he was going back and forth because he had family in other countries that were nearby in Moldova. His uncle was there, but then he was assassinated, hung out with his cousin. They went into hiding. And then he evaded assassination attempts. So, I mean, people have been after this kid basically his whole life, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
And then before he took the throne, he ended up partnering with the dude that killed his father and brother. And had been attempting to kill him. And was like, hey, you want to work together so I can get my throne back? And then that's when he took it over again. And
that's another thing that is a recurring theme throughout his entire story, is that nobody stuck to their guns on any decision for very long. If they were like, yeah, I'm totally on your side, I got your back, everyone's flipping on dimes and betraying each other.
It's like, I'm totally friends
It really
with you.
is just like every night's the Red Wedding. It's exactly what you said.
Well, yeah, and that really affected Vlad from the research I did. So, yeah, he invited the boyars over, and it was like 200 of them or something, right? And then they ended up building his fucking castle, which is such a baller move and really fucked up. But like you were saying, he had these problems with betrayal. And so there was a story that they told, one, that he would leave a golden cup like in the fountain of the square, and nobody would take it because everyone was like, no.
Because they knew they'd get their hands chopped off.
Yeah, and they trusted him. I heard another story about a merchant that came, and he had a bunch of stuff in his cart or whatever. He's like, what are you buying? and he went to Vlad and was like, hey, can I bring my stuff to your castle and you keep it safe? And he was like, no, I've built a really safe and trusting place. So why don't you go leave it in the square and you can come stay here and you'll be good. So the merchant was like, okay. Went back the next day and he was missing some money. And so then Vlad was like, everybody in town, we're going to find out who did this. I'm so sorry this happened to you. So then they ended up finding out who did it. Vlad returned the money, but then gave him like an extra $1, whatever that time money is, and didn't tell the merchant. And so then the merchant went and checked and was like, oh yeah, I got all my money plus one more. And Vlad was like, okay, cool, thank you for telling me, because if you wouldn't have told me that you had an extra one, I was going to impale you with the thief.
Yes, so
Jesus
Fucking
Christ,
ridiculous.
dude.
yeah, so I think it's important to understand, and a lot of people would be surprised because as we go through the story, I want to kind of put into context that yes, it's a tough subject because Vlad is seen pretty much as a hero to a lot of Romanian people.
He brought money, prosperity, and other goods to all of the people who
to my new
all the people who lived
empire.
in his kingdom. Like he made sure that everybody prospered under him. which
Yeah,
is
and
something
even
that's
people
just
today
unheard
who
of.
live in Romania, and that government is apparently, from what I could read from contemporary Romanian people on forums and stuff, is a very corrupt government, and so they actually see him more as a hero because he was able to come in and be like, no, these are the rules, this is how things are going to go. If you don't follow my strict Christian moral code, then I'm gonna get rid of you. And he wanted to get he felt that like people like beggars were like a terrible blight on his territory, so he at one point supposedly invited a bunch of beggars over for
The ill, the poor, the lame, beggars, and kind of
like into one location, into one building to have like a big feast, and then ordered
them all drunk.
Yeah, got them all drunk, and then ordered all the doors locked and the place burned down so that he could get rid of the scourge that was afflicting his society. But you got to think, at the time, people were constantly having to deal with different leaders coming in and killing their previous leaders, and then new rules being up. So at the time, really the only way to keep things under control was to be this fucking strict. But also he had learned from every other person he had seen throughout his life that striking fear into the hearts of your enemies was the best way to make sure that things stayed in check and to keep your power. So he had, because really, he is called Vlad the Impaler because that was the thing that he's most known for, but he didn't invent impaling. Like, he learned that because that was a thing that everyone else was also doing. Like, people were getting impaled all the time, just maybe not on the scale that he was impaling people.
Have we described what like the actual like act of impaling is?
Yeah, they say stick it up your poo hole or your
goo hole.
Your goo hole. Yeah.
No, but I also heard accounts of him dressing up as a peasant, and he would like go down and like mingle amongst the people to see if people are following his rules. But I think it's important too that the rules that you're talking about that he wanted in place were fair rules. Like, do your part, be trustworthy, be honest, and we're good. Which, I mean, those are good rules to have. He just went crazy about enforcing them. And I think he was pretty loved by the lower class of people. Like, maybe not the bakers. From an account that I heard, he considered them just as bad as thieves robbing you in the woods. Like, yeah, they take all your money at once, but these people will take your money for years. But the lower class of people really loved him for what he was doing.
Yeah, and there are a lot of cases where he would win back this land and then give it back to those poorer people who had owned it originally, and it had been stolen by whether it was Ottomans or a different ruler who had come in. So
I heard there's people today that were like, yeah, he gave my family land that long ago.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would be surprised to learn that this is all rooted in Christianity, which, I'm not saying as a slight toward Christianity, but I think a lot of people think of him as being this terrible, maniacal monster. I mean, the word Dracul eventually evolved in Romanian to mean devil rather than dragon. And so, that gave this even darker air to what he was doing. But he had a very strong moral code and way. It seems obviously very medieval because it was medieval times when this happened, but down to things like, he seemed to be really, really obsessed with the chastity of women. Like, if a woman had lost her virginity before marriage, she would get impaled through the vagina, basically.
God damn. That's
and
he did a lot of bad things.
If there was adultery, basically the woman would be impaled, and then her breasts would be cut off, and then the man she had slept with would have to eat her breasts. Like, he'd be forced.
That's hardcore.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that any of the things that he did by any standard were not horrific.
Yeah.
It's just, I think you got to look at the context of the time. That doesn't excuse that he killed a fuck ton of people, but at the time, that was kind of just what everybody was doing who was in power at that time, and that's what people are still doing.
There were a couple instances when enemies popped up, including his half-brother at some point, and he did try to go about it diplomatically, but sometimes these people would refuse, and so he was like, well, if you don't want to go diplomatically, then you're about to get impaled. So
Well, and people
he did
like
raid some village, and
I mean, people often like just accused him of like wild shit, like outside of what he was doing, like that he wouldn't be like that he wouldn't like pledge fealty to the King of Hungary and all these other things that like caused him to potentially lose his second rule.
well, part of it later on, people were writing letters forged as him. And he was like, I didn't write that.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
if you really want to talk about a character that is shrouded in myth, the propaganda machine around giving him a negative look started like from the get-go. Basically, everybody was just trying to make him look as evil and monstrous, which at the time is probably exactly what he wanted. But for people trying to research his actual life, because there's already so little information that's like hard dates and things about what he did, a lot of what people think of him as is like I said, a demon, like a demon that just loved drinking blood and impaling people and all this crazy shit.
He did raid villages. He definitely did that. He definitely burned places down, and he definitely impaled people. Like, we know that these things he did do. I mean, there were some beheadings, a lot more impalings. Did you hear about like the turban nailing? Did that come across in your research?
Yeah, where I think it was some rival, I think Turkish.
Because now he's like, we're good with the Turks. He's paying them, giving them like, you stay there and I'll stay here, and we're good for now, for a long time. And then I think it was around this time when he was like, I don't want to pay you anymore. And he ends up starting a war with the Ottoman Empire, which is, if you look at the map, massive compared to where he's at.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the people come.
They refused to take off their turbans as a sign of respect to him, so that he had 3 spikes, like nails, driven into each of their heads to nail the turbans to their heads.
God damn.
So that they couldn't take them off.
Brutal, dude. Yeah, so he's...
You just got to put some respect on Vlad the Impaler. That's all I'm saying.
That's fucking crazy, man. So I read in the winter of 1461, he claimed to have killed 23,000 Turks after an attempt to capture him. They made an attempt to capture him, so he was like, "Nah, fuck you guys," and went and like just demolished a bunch of them. And this is what really broke the peace with the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, and at one point the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire went to one of these villages that he had raided, and the place was just surrounded. He liked to do like concentric circles of people who he had impaled, and there were about 20,000 rotting corpses that had been impaled all around the outside of the city. And the Sultan was basically like, "This dude's for real."
Well, yeah. So that was the second encounter, right? So that the Sultan went, and Vlad was like, "Dude, you want to do this? Let's do it." And he kind of destroyed a lot of their armies with only half of their size, at least, right? And so then the Sultan was like, "My bad, I'm going to retreat." But dude,
I think the original army he brought was like 150,000 strong. It was like a massive army, and like they got their shit handed to them.
But because of political reasons, he was like, "Let me go back." And when he got to Vlad's place, it was covered with 20,000 of like impaled Turks. It's like, how do you like? All right. Never mind.
Yeah, my bad.
This is a fucking horror show. I'm going to get the fuck out.
And this was known as the Forest of the Impaled. And so that Sultan was like, psych. And then he dipped out. But then he was eventually killed.
The Sultan?
The Sultan, yeah.
Yeah.
Not from Vlad. He ended up, at this point...
Didn't Vlad at one point try to assassinate him, but he got the wrong tent?
Yeah.
Yeah, so at one point he...
I think that was the first battle before he saw the Forest of the Impaled. I think that's how he escaped.
Yeah, because Vlad's original plan was, one of his favorite pastimes in battle was, because he was familiar with Turkish culture and how to speak the language, he would disguise himself as a Turk, and he just basically waltzed right into the Turkish encampment where the Sultan was supposed to be, because he was so pissed at the Sultan that he wanted to stab him and kill him personally. So he found where they were located, got some intel on what was going on there, went back to his army, said, "Let's surprise him," split his army in half, had them attack from the north and the south. And this gets into...
the old pincer technique.
Yeah, and this gets into... He really should have bottlenecked, but... this gets into a lot of why Vlad was so successful, but in this instance, when they went back and had the surprise attack, he ended up picking the wrong tent and didn't find the Sultan, so he wasn't able to assassinate him at that point. But yeah, he did end up getting killed at a different point. But Vlad actually had a lot of like firsts in warfare that I thought were super, super interesting. So obviously he had all of his classic torture methods. He had his impalement, which was his favorite style of killing people. He also, though, was one of the first people to introduce the idea of like chemical warfare or like biological warfare. He would round up people who had been infected by the bubonic plague, and he would send them into Turkish towns and camps and get everybody sick with the bubonic plague.
That's so crazy. Yeah, a lot of guerrilla tactics.
His army was one of the first ones to use gunpowder, which apparently was pretty devastating against armies who weren't prepared for it. Typically, his army, compared to the Ottomans, was very outclassed. So a lot of his success came from guerrilla warfare tactics, attacking in the night, attacking from different angles, coming out of the mountains and then running back into the mountains right after they had attacked. So he was able to wipe out a lot of people in that way. But yeah, a lot of firsts in like the art of warfare, which I thought was really, really interesting.
Yeah, so it was around the time after the Forest of the Impaled that his half-brother ended up taking the throne over. Vlad fled, thought he was going to be safe with this Matthias character.
And then they basically imprisoned him
And
in
they
Hungary.
captured
They like
him,
shanghaied him in Hungary.
For 12 years. And it was at this point, like we mentioned earlier, where there was letters forged from Vlad to other people that I guess that were like really inarticulate. And he was like, no, I'm a fucking educated prince, bro. That's definitely not me. But yeah, he was there for 12 years, which is pretty wild. There were reports, again, some of this is speculation, like you mentioned, that during his imprisonment, he would catch mice or have birds brought to him, which was very like Renfield.
Yeah.
Right? And he would impale them like on tiny little wood planks. But I heard that's
so cute.
That's probably not true, but there are reports of it.
It's that to me that sounds very sensational, which I mean a lot of this sounds like it would be sensational, but like you said, you know, the impalements and stuff, that's all true. The 20,000 people, like that's from letters he wrote where he was like, like writing to the Sultan like, hey bro, I killed 23,000 of your people and impaled them. But
at one point he said, it would be better for those who think of death should not follow me. That's such a baller thing to say. Like, he's a pretty smart dude too.
Yeah, very well educated and a great tactician, obviously. But eventually, he was released by Hungary in 1474 or 75 and decided to once again...
Because his brother died.
Yeah, once again tried to seize back the Wallachian throne and fight against a forthcoming invasion, once again, by the Ottomans.
So, yeah, from my reports, the year that he took the throne, he was also killed that same year.
Yeah,
very
so
shortly after.
At the end of his life, he converted to Catholicism, away from Orthodoxy, and then after fighting for the Moldavians, he regained the throne in 1476, but was killed shortly after.
Yeah.
There are questions about the exact circumstances of his death. The one that I heard that I thought, and seems to be the most valid, is that he did the whole I'm going to disguise myself as a Turk thing and snuck into one of the camps once again and was killed in the camp. Some theories suggest that he was actually accidentally killed by his own soldiers who mistook him for a Turkish enemy.
Oh, shit.
And killed him. But either way...
They said that if that account is correct, that they cut his body into tiny pieces.
Yeah, and
Jesus.
Yeah, and shipped his head, and they preserved it in honey so that they could display it like at the like in the Ottoman capital, and they could display it and show everybody that Vlad had finally been killed.
That's pretty crazy.
So yeah, pretty insane. But a fitting way for his life to end, I guess. But yeah, as soon as he was killed, of course, like all of these stories about the highly exaggerated things that he had done, like early forms of print were just starting to become a thing in the region. So he was actually one of the first horror figures in printed literature himself. Before the Dracula stuff even happened, he was already seen as a horror figure.
As far as Stoker goes, he does mention Dracula by name in his notes from the account that I came across, but he only mentions his name and not anything that he did. So it's really hard for people to say for sure whether or not that character was actually based around him or if he just kind of liked the name and the location.
Yeah, from what I've seen, he pretty much knew nothing about Vlad's actual life, like even down to the fact that he was infamous for his brutality.
And scraps of like miscellaneous shit.
Yeah, because originally
he may have had an account with a specific historian, but we're not sure if that is true. Like, we just don't know.
Yeah, because originally the book was going to be called The Undead, and the character was
Count Wampire.
Yeah. And so I think
Count
Wampire. Probably pronounced vampire.
Vampire.
But I think he just saw the name Dracula, and at the time that name had evolved because of the reputation of Vlad the Impaler. Dracula had gone from being son of the dragon to son of the devil, and the word Dracul it now is more associated with the devil than it is with. So, obviously he would see that and go, oh, that's interesting. That means devil. I'm going to give my evil vampire character that. In hindsight, I think a lot of people, obviously, in examples like Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, that tries to tie the whole Vlad the Impaler more into being that same character. Of course, fudging some things about his history. Dracula Untold tries to also tie that whole thing in. There have even been...
Did you end up watching them?
I didn't know. I couldn't bring myself to watch Dracula Untold again. But there was a study in 1982 that I don't think has any merit, but it kind of shows how people have tried to almost retroactively even further tie Vlad into this vampire idea and this vampire myth. There was a theory going around that Vlad may have had an allergy to high protein foods. And a lot of the time when you have an allergy like that, it's like smoking cigarettes where like you don't feel good while you're doing it, but you feel worse when you're not. So there was this theory that he ingested blood because he had this like allergy addiction thing going where he would act erratic if he didn't have blood. I don't really buy into any of that.
I think even because there was a show that exists. I think we've talked about it before in small parts that was on Spike TV for a long time called Deadliest Warriors. And they had an entire episode about Vlad the Impaler, and they talked at length about this theory about that he basically would just drink blood around the camp and everything in order to like satiate these urges that basically would have kept him from being able to live a normal life.
Is that you're
likely,
saying that they reported that as true?
They reported that as true, which, like I said, the likelihood is that it was not true.
Yeah.
And like I said, the information that we've received later down the line about Bram Stoker's connection to all of this and about, whether or not this character is actually connected to the origins of Count Dracula is from this German story writer who I think it's William Wilkinson, who wrote like this entire book about Moldavia and about the whole Vlad line, and basically said, "Oh yeah, I provided all of this information to Stoker, but Stoker wasn't around anymore to provide the corroboration to that story."
Yeah, and that was surprising for me doing research for this episode.
Yeah,
I thought for sure that they were connected. I thought that Stoker was like, yeah, that's what I bait. That's where I got the name. I took similar ideas from that. So to find out that it might not be based on him at all was very surprising for me.
Yeah, I read a quote here that the book that Bram had read that had given him the name Dracula said Dracula in the Wallachian language means devil. The Wallachians gave this as a surname to any person noted for their cunning, cruelty, or courageousness, which is not true. You had to be a part of the Order of the Dragon or part of that family.
A Christian coalition.
Yeah, so that was the Salvation Army back in the day, right? And so it just seems like Bram kind of had a kind of a misunderstanding of the name Dracula and what it actually meant and what the connection was and everything there. So I was a little bit disappointed, but that there wasn't more of a connection. But I think again, this is just what's so interesting about all of the figures we've talked about in this nonfiction November is that each one of them, as I've dove deeper into their stories, the more I've just seen like all of the myth and stuff like melt away from their story, and it's really interesting to learn like what their actual stories were, and they're still interesting as hell. I mean, the fact is he impaled over 20,000 men, women, and children. He
crazy.
ordered people to be skinned, boiled, decapitated, blinded, strangled, hanged, burned, roasted, hacked, nailed, buried alive, stabbed. He would impale women with their babies to where the babies would be like stacked on top of them and then they'd be impaled through together. I mean, horrific stuff. And that's what captures people's imagination. It's that true crime thing where you're like, oh, I'm into the really fucked up stuff. But
when he was a tactician on the level of someone like a Sun Tzu, of like just having ridiculous ideas about combat that took small armies and turned them into massive forces without having to have big numbers or strong people, which is incredible.
Yeah, and what surprised me too during this, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, is that to some people he is like this folk icon, but he's a folk hero. To a lot of people, he is like a good guy, and so it's divisive. But some people think of him as this crazy dictator, like tyrant type character. But then other people are like, yeah, he did a lot of good for this country.
Yeah, and so I wanted to read a couple basically just verbatim posts that I had seen from people who either are Romanian or people who know more about the culture. I wanted to read like what that perspective was in these people's words. But a lot of comparison gets made between him and someone like Hitler. And the question to Romanian people who see him as a hero is, what's the difference there? And this person addresses it here where they say that Vlad Tepes was not a genocidal maniac who hated groups of people for irrational reasons. So they said, so far as I can tell, he wasn't a racist either. What he was the leader of a country that was being constantly invaded and terrorized by a much stronger foreign power, one that had already conquered and subjugated several neighboring countries. During his own lifetime, the Ottoman Turks destroyed the Roman Empire, an entity that had survived for almost 2,000 years.
Yeah, because from the country that he's in was, say, like, you know, right in the middle of where the Holy Roman Empire was and then where the Ottoman Empire was. Like, it was kind of centralized.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a constant battlefield, and he was a product of that kind of just constant battle. Another person here says, against a relentless enemy that was far stronger than he was, with little or no hope of outside assistance, and with his own brother having turned traitor, Vlad decided he would make the cost of waging war against Wallachia so horrific that maybe the Turks would think twice about it.
Well, I think, you know, if we're looking at the difference between him and something like Hitler went out of his way to go out and destroy. Vlad, I think, almost intentionally tried to keep just where he was safe. Which to me is a huge difference.
Yeah, and
I'm not saying the guy was like, you know, my hero or anything like that. I mean, he still did some fucked up stuff.
But I think in a time of like ineffectual political leaders and people who are, I mean, most people see their political leaders as being shitty people anyway, and they're doing horrific things just more behind closed doors, like drone strikes and invading countries and killing Iraqis, for instance. You know, so there's it's different in the execution. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people are looking at their corrupt leaders and their ineffectual leaders and like, we could use a guy who's just going to come in and say, like, this is how my country's going to go. And of course, you know, it's a dictator.
Right.
At the time, though, it was what those people needed to survive, really, was somebody who would step up to the plate and say, okay, I'm going to fuck up everybody who tries to fuck with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
think
think
you were Lakin at the time. I could see why you were, or you're descended from those people. I would 100% see why you would see this guy as kind of a war hero.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something where you can condone the actions, you know, in a hindsight lens, because we don't exist in that time. You know, it was.
A good point.
I mean, while the things that he did were gruesome and terrible, it's also in a time frame where nothing but, you know, hand-to-hand combat war was happening at all times.
It was the norm.
Yeah, I mean, violence was part of culture at that point. It's part of the reason why art all dictates around war and around violence, especially on the behalf of religion. I mean, and all of those things kind of tie back into the fact that you had these two different warring countries, basically, that were all smashed around these tiny little areas that were all just trying to scrap and put together something to survive.
Yeah, all Vlad wanted was to just rule his kingdom and have it be left alone.
Yeah.
and he was like, and it's never going to happen unless I show you guys that if you fuck with us, I'm going to kill every man, woman, and child that is in your kingdom, and I'm going to display them so that everybody else knows.
And he tried to do diplomatic things. I mean, he tried to connect with Hungary. I mean, he tried to build an alliance that
Should have
could
just gone to
stand
Taco
up.
Bell if he was trying to connect with Hungary, right?
So he tried to build an alliance that could stand up to these additional powers. And everybody else was like, well, if we just keep paying money to the Ottomans, they'll leave us the fuck alone. And he's like, well, I don't want to fucking do that. Like, I want the people who exist in my country to prosper. Mm-hmm. And just because we exist near the Ottoman Empire doesn't mean that we should have to pay them.
They were the Empire, like Star Wars, this oppressive, horrible force, and he and his little armies were like the Rebel Alliance. And the Rebel Alliance sometimes had to blow up space stations full of thousands and thousands of civilians and contractors in order to, get one up on the Empire. And so yeah, that's just the word I used a lot last week was nuance.
Yeah.
Again, with this doesn't even scratch the surface of really, I think in order to really truly understand why he did the things he did and what his motivations were, you'd really have to dive into the entire history of Romania and the Ottoman Empire and the Holy Roman Empire and all this stuff. And so this was us trying to condense a very overwhelming amount of politics and Game of Thrones. I mean, that's the perfect comparison, really.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about it before, but this Game of Thrones level
Even some of the names of some of the countries, I was like, oh.
And the people, too, where it's like George R.R. Martin, he's like, oh, no, in history, everybody is named the same thing. So, yeah, and so I'm going to name all of my characters the same thing.
No, it's like from Goodfellas where like everybody's named Peter or Paul. Here's my son Paulie and his brother Peter.
Yeah, so it was just,
I get confused myself sometimes.
really just comes down to desperate times call for desperate measures.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, but again, that I'm not saying I'm cool with I'm not saying I'm going to go out and start impaling people to make a point.
And I hope not.
Yeah, and I just want to say real quick that like although the connection to Stoker is very light, I don't mind it. I was surprised at first and maybe a little disappointed, but the more that I think about it, I'm like, cool, you got Transylvania, which to me is very like vampire, which is cool, and then you get the name, and I'm like, really, that's enough for me. I'm glad that Stoker's Dracula isn't as fucking gruesome as that. I don't think that book would have gone as far.
Well, it also allows for there to have been some creative license there.
Totally.
And I think that I think that if you point everything that Stoker wrote back to history and say that these are the reasons why he wrote those things, it kind of takes away a little bit of the magic of the fact that somebody came up with the idea that still survives to this day through the modern vampire.
Yeah, and we don't know for sure or not, but it still could have been the inspiration for what he wrote.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we probably wouldn't be talking about Vlad the Impaler if it wasn't for Dracula. Like he wouldn't still be in the conversation, and because
I think he would have kind of gotten lost to history to some
at least
extent.
in our circle. Yeah.
And so I do think that connection is important, and also in movies that have gone on that are inspired by both Bram Stoker's Dracula and the historical Dracula, and have tried to merge those things while they're not historical documents that are giving you a real life account. It's cool to see how they interpret, like you get to see the battle with everybody being impaled in Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it's done in a really cool artistic way. And then even though I don't like the Dracula Untold movie, there are some cool little bits where like the famous nighttime battle that like the painting is done with all the people with the torches and everything, that is like Vlad's famous nighttime battle that has some name that is difficult to pronounce.
I think it's like the Battle of the Torches. I think it's super simple.
Yes,
like if you like break it down from its original language into English.
Yeah, so that Battle of the Torches, like in the Dracula Untold movie, they make it so that it wasn't actually nighttime. He basically darkened the sky with like dark clouds and bats to give an advantage to his army, and so they tie the vampire stuff in with the actual historical Dracula stuff. But again, just like with the Warrens, I think if you're interested in this figure, you're doing a disservice by just going off of that media as being like, oh yeah, Vlad the Impaler.
Right.
You know, if you look into his history, it's very interesting, and there's a lot of like really, you know, it's all full of the betrayal and all that stuff that gets people watching
Gets the
HBO
people
shows
going.
these days. Yeah.
I just want to say real quick that as far as I went, I did a lot of research using the Britannica online, and then Knology, I think it was called, over on YouTube. So that's where I did some of my research. I don't know if you guys want to shout out I know Wikipedia.
Yeah, Wikipedia for me, and then also the Encyclopedia Britannica is
Yeah.
where I got a lot of my information as well.
Yeah, and then I got some information from Count Dankula on YouTube. Has a series called Absolute Mad Lads.
That's a perfect
and
name.
he talks about Vlad the Impaler in one episode, and then also Simon Whistler on Biographics does a pretty good short, like 15-minute version that basically takes everything we just talked about and sums it up in a nice
Even
British
smaller
accent in a
and
smaller
smaller
15-minute package. So, yeah, if you're interested in Vlad the Impaler,
Glad you plugged that after we've had the conversation. So to get that information, they would have had to have watched us first.
exactly, yeah. So, yeah, what I will say is that I would need to learn more to really make a definitive decision, but I've come around on Vlad. I think maybe he wasn't too terrible a dude for the time period he lived in.
Don't get mad. Get Vlad.
Get Vlad, yeah.
So far, our tier list goes S tier Houdini, maybe A tier is blank, B tier we'll put Vlad there, and then the Warrens are somewhere below that.
What was the results of the survey that you put out on the Warrens? Did it come back mostly hack frauds?
Yeah, so I'll give you guys the actual results right here because I have a screenshot that I took.
All right, on. I'm glad I asked them.
Yeah, so I put out a poll asking how do you feel about the Warrens, and the three options were: Ed and Lorraine Warren were 1 or A, Ghostbusters, B, hack frauds, or C, a third thing. We got 12% votes for Ghostbusters. That was the smallest category, and then 50% of votes were for hack frauds, so that won out by quite a bit, and then 38% for a third thing. Those are the people that I think probably haven't listened to our Warren episode, which will convince you to vote hack fraud. But
I'm glad there wasn't like some like shitty plurality. Like we actually got like a real majority in the right direction.
and I that's why I thought that our Warren episode would do well, is because that's the most votes we've gotten on a poll, like outside of doing Terror Tales stuff where we get people voting in there. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing the research on this. I love falling down these rabbit holes to where like I feel so overwhelmed at first, and then when you really start to get to like the root of their life and their story, you find out so much about, I just love learning about the time period that like Houdini lived in and why certain things made it so that his life went the way it did, and obviously Vlad living in a completely different time period, and how the place he was in and the people he interacted with and being fucking kidnapped when he was a kid and held prisoner. Like, I don't envy the man, but I have a little bit of empathy.
Yeah, so that's going to wrap it up for our discussion on Vlad the Impaler. We hope that you enjoyed that. We're going to do some live decision making right now and try to figure out what we're talking about next week. So we'll have some true crime discussions or killer discussions that we have on our old idea notebook here.
Yeah.
So what's jumping out to me? We got Jack the Ripper.
I want to rip it.
I
There's
mean,
an option.
I don't think we need to have a further conversation. I
I'm
think
very
that
fascinated with Jack
Jack
the
the Ripper
Ripper.
just sounds like
That's-
a
oh, okay,
yeah.
one and done.
And I've already
All
done
right.
a lot of
That
research
sounds-
into it.
That sounds tight.
And it gives me an excuse to watch the terrible Johnny Depp movie From Hell, based on the Alan Moore graphic novel.
Is
Maybe
the
I'll read
graphic novel good?
Well, it's Alan Moore, so yeah, the
Yeah, I
graphic
would
novel's
think so,
good
yeah.
and the movie's terrible.
Hey,
I like Watchmen.
I'd say Watchmen's
Yeah.
pretty good, especially the director's cut.
All right, well, there you go. That was live decision making.
Yeah, we're gonna be ripping it live next week. Not live. We're gonna recording it. We're gonna be recording it while we rip it.
Fuck it, we'll do it, Clive.
Yeah, talking about Jack the Ripper, a figure where we don't know their true history, but also a figure that has a lot of myth and legend built around it, and we can get into the spring-heeled Jack, like urban legend stuff, and the whole history of why, because he basically was the first highly publicized serial killer.
No spoilers.
So
Save it for next week.
yeah, if you ain't heard about Jack the Ripper.
And if you're listening to this at time of release, then we hope that you have a nice Thanksgiving and stay safe on Black Friday if you're going out.
Yeah, don't get trampled, bro.
But other than that, thank you so much for joining us this week. We really appreciate it. If you could like, share, subscribe, and do all that stuff, that would mean so much to us. And we will see you next week. I've been Tone.
I've been John.
And I have been Vladislav, the boy,
the monk.
internet darling, Anthony,
The third.
the third, Dracula.
See you next time.
Oh, man. Keep it creepy.